Good afternoon. Welcome to UMFS Live. My name is Nate, and this is episode 5 of season 4. I start to lose track about this time. We are going to be joined today by Cory, who is the music teacher at Charterhouse School in Richmond, and I'm going to be bringing him in here in just a moment, so just bear with us real quick while I dial Mr. Cory into the room, sending out the invitation. And let's see if that gets him connected. I want to thank everyone for tuning in here live and also following us on Instagram. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook page as well. And there is Mr. Cory. That worked very easily. Good afternoon, Mr. Cory.
Nate, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really pleased and grateful for your time. I know that you're in between classes today over here at Charterhouse School in Richmond, and just wanted to give our audience an opportunity to get to know a little bit about you and why you do this important work. So I will jump into our first question, Mr. Cory. How long have you been at Charterhouse School, and what brought you here?
This is my 4th year at Charterhouse School. Before that, I was teaching at part-time at a school for several years, Millwood School, which is a small private school out at Woodlake area, and also was working a part-time, customer service job for a online business down in towards Chester. I did that part-time as well, but I've been teaching private music classes, piano and guitar, for probably the last 20 plus years, and I do that in the afternoon still. I still have a small roster of private students that I teach, so I've been doing that for many, many years as well.
Well, that's wonderful, and we're so grateful that you chose to join Charterhouse School and the work that you do with the young people there, the musicians. And I wonder if you could just talk about what inspires you to do this important work, I guess, as a music teacher, but also an educator in general.
Well, I think it's a very, there's a lot of answers to that question. I think as a musician, I think as a younger person, when I was very young, say in high school, I always had the impression in my life that I would be teaching. I started teaching students when I was in high school. I had a younger sister who had, neighborhood friends, and I used to teach a handful of the kids in the neighborhood piano at the time when I was in high school. So I started very young, but as far as teaching as an adult, I've been teaching since I was in college, and when I got married in the late 90s, it was a way to pretty much pay the bills and pay the rent, pay the mortgage, so to speak. At that time in my younger days, I was in a few different bands, and still continue to write music to this day. But so that was something that I've always done, is played with different groups. I've played with a flute player, Susan Davis. She and I played flute and guitar together for many, many years. She just recently, during the pandemic, moved out to New Mexico to work in the high school and middle schools out there. So she and I haven't played as much together in the last year or so, but she and I have played probably 350 plus weddings and events over the years in the Richmond area. And we are the Cory Davis duo. And so that's one of my, I think for she and I, it's, one of my most favorite accomplishments, that she and I have played so much together over the years. But again, I've played in different bands, and, Charterhouse School was really my first full-time teaching position that I ever took on. So that was a good thing for, in the time that it happened, especially during the pandemic and things. So it's been very challenging. It was a challenging time for every teacher, I'm sure, during the pandemic. But that's kind of a little bit of the background. I've been teaching in different private schools, as a guitar ensemble leader, theory teacher, and teaching lessons, as well as doing sub work over the many years for schools like Trinity Episcopal. And I taught at collegiate school for several years. And that was kind of where I got my start, right out of graduate school. So,
Well, a true journeyman, like a good musician, right? You're well versed. You can travel around, and I wonder if I can pull an audible on the next question, because you already spoke to why it is you choose to serve others, which we're so grateful that you choose to lead both in education and in music and take your experience to the classroom. But I wonder, what I failed to ask you earlier is, what are your primary instruments?
Well, my primary instrument is guitar. However, I did start as a young person in the 5th grade through high school and my first year of college as a trumpet player. And for various reasons, I ended up migrating to the piano and guitar during college.
Yeah.
And eventually graduated from VCU. I went to a couple other colleges before VCU, but graduated as a guitar major at VCU. So guitar is my primary instrument. I use the piano to teach still. The piano, there's no real substitute for the piano as a learning tool for music. You know, if I'm writing or if I'm teaching, the piano is kind of the first place that I go. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very well versed both in your ability to pick up instruments, different, like you said, you started with the trumpet and then piano and then the strings, of course, on guitar. So very well versed. I wonder if you can talk then about the young people that you serve as a teacher, but also when you're not in the classroom and your experience with private lessons. I know that adults in a teaching role or a mentoring role as a musician might have certainly pass along a lot of lessons to young people. But I'm wondering, Mr. Cory, are there any particular lessons that you have learned from young people that stick with you?
Well, for me, the lessons I've learned, I mean, there's probably so many, but learning patience, learning extreme enthusiasm. I think that's important, especially dealing with the younger kids. It's very important that that's one of the things I had to learn. I still learn, dealing with the younger people. You have to be super animated. I was not born to be a kindergarten teacher, but that's kind of a big deal with the young people. You have to be extra enthusiastic about what you're doing and really learn how to celebrate the small.
Mm-hmm.
Music, to me, it's about learning to celebrate this very small success that just happened right now. And many times the young people, they will never recognize it, and that's part of what we do is teach them how to recognize that very small success that happens right there in front of us. So yeah, there's a lot of things I've learned from the young people. Learn how to I think from my teaching experience, language to me is probably the most important things, because if I can teach, if I can share the language of learning music, in other words, encouraging certain parents and young people to never use the word practice, that's very important, because that practice word is 99% of the time it's a negative for young people. So, but yeah, it's an interesting thing that I've developed over the years, and dealing with many different students. And that's one thing, learning from your students, you have to adapt. And I will say this, that there's one job that I had as a young person, as a teenager into my college years, that I think prepared me for any other job, especially the teaching job, where you have to deal with, say, say an elementary school class, or a young student, or an adult student. And that job that prepared me for that was being a waiter, believe it or not, because as a waiter, you have to learn how to talk friendly with all types of people and, interact with all types of customers. And I think that's what really prepared me to do the teaching thing, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those interpersonal skills, those direct contact support skills when you're having a brief interaction with all kinds of different people, really, like you said, helps prepare you to be such an effective educator as you are. I wonder, we've talked a little bit about, the impact that people have had on you and what you've learned, but I wonder more about you. What is it you like to do to unplug, rewind, reset when you're not in the classroom? Maybe that's music, but maybe there's something in addition to that.
Well, I always read, I study like current events, that type of thing. But for me, my downtime is cooking. Yeah, my downtime is cooking. And so I'm the primary chef in our household. I cook all the time, and my wife doesn't cook at all, really. Um, and so to me, it's something that I've always enjoyed, and I find that it de-stresses me when I'm cooking. So, I have friends of mine that are into food, and, my wife and I are into food. So that's very important to me. I find that cooking is something that I always want to get better at.
Hmm.
I have recipes like many of us have that we want to perfect. So there are those, and I would say that my wife and I are big. We don't have kids of our own, so we're very lucky to have the ability to go out on dates like married people, with kids don't always have to do. So when we do go out, we really enjoy food. So that's something that we do if we go on a trip somewhere. That's really our main focus is, what are we going to have? What are we going to enjoy? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And food brings people together. And I know for a long time through the pandemic, we sort of lost that opportunity to get out and explore some of the culinary that's available to us, especially here in Richmond. You don't have to go far for some good restaurants right here in Richmond, Virginia. So thank you for sharing that. And I have to ask, what is your medium for? Are you in the kitchen? Are you at the grill? Where do you prefer to be when you're cooking?
Well, that's an interesting question. My wife and I we've been living in the same house since 1999, and we bought the house in 2001, and it's a very small house on South Side, and we just recently had the kitchen redone. So we didn't have a kitchen for like 4 months. So I was using a hot plate in our piano room for just over 4 months, and using the grill all the time. So I'm adept. I like to grill. My wife likes when I grill because there's less mess. So grilling is something that, especially uh, things that I like to grill, like chicken and things like that. But I put anything on the grill. Um,
Especially this time of year.
yeah. Now that we have a newer kitchen, it's just a blessing to be able to cook and have space for two people in the same kitchen. So.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, I'm grateful to you for sharing that, and I'm glad that you were able to reward yourself and your wife with a nice kitchen so you can continue practicing your cooking skills, and I'm sure that makes her very happy. I want to lead us here into our last question. We're joined today by music teacher Scott Cory, who is over at Charterhouse School here in Richmond. I'm so grateful for his time. Last question before I let you go. I know you've got a busy day still ahead of you. Mr. Cory, can you talk a little bit about what keeps you coming to this important work?
Well, I think the answer, when I checked out your questions, the answer is the same. Like, what made me take the job at Charterhouse School? Because the population here is quite different than the students that I deal with privately, and quite different as a population than students that I've dealt with at, some more affluent private schools. So I think for me, that answer is that I know that I'm going to reach at least this many people, and I can safely say that every year, every semester, it's not just one, but if I can reach one person, and one thing about a Charterhouse School, it's an environment where there's, a diverse student body with different challenges, behavioral, learning disabled children. But we always I always find a handful of very, very talented musicians here. The challenge is that they don't always, our residential program, the students may not be here for the full year. So there's a lot of challenges dealing with that uh, uh, overturn, if you will, turnover in the student body. So that is challenging as a classroom teacher, when you're rehearsing a group of kids and then your best drummer leaves or your bass player leaves, so that's always challenging. But we are, in the same vein, we're getting new students on a regular basis. So, I have a new bass player who's also a trombone player. We didn't have a bass player in one of our groups for, probably a month or two because the other player left. So now our trombone player has taken an interest in the bass. So those are things that really keep me here. you know, and I look forward to each day as working with those kids. You know, not all of the kids are here to learn, frankly, but on that same side, there are many of the kids here who I know for me as a young person, you know, that's all I was interested in and was doing music. I only did the math and the English and the science and everything else just because I had to. But music was something that kept me in school, kept me on track, and you know, kept me as a goal for the future. So
Well, that's wonderful, Mr. Cory. We really appreciate you and what you do for the students there at Charterhouse School. And I will say to our audience, I have had the opportunity to photograph and record some of the music classes here through the years that Mr. Cory has led, and he's absolutely right. There are some extremely talented musicians that come through Charterhouse School and our residential program in Richmond, the Child and Family Healing Center. Of course, with that, as he pointed out, there is turnover, but I can say this: what I see whenever I have the opportunity to observe the students either playing in the classroom or something more public like a campus event, they're always smiling, they're always happy. And so when you're talking about reaching one person, I can say safely, I've witnessed you reaching those students, and I think you brought joy to them. So Mr. Cory, thank you for that. Thank you for joining me for UMFS Live. I look forward to seeing you soon. To everyone who tuned in to this episode, continue following us right here on Instagram. Be sure to follow us on Facebook. Mr. Cory, have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
thank you very much. Bye.